Hello, in this video, I am an Eskimo. It is cold, therefore I will be sitting backwards like this, reading the student sample. The title of this piece is called Poor Victim Sample I Used because they turned it in first. Turned it in first. And that's really it. But it's not a bad piece. Actually, this piece is a really good example to work off of because the student scored 1 for thesis and 3 out of 4 for evidence, which is not a bad bar to aim for. In fact, this is kind of a good foundation to get back into the game of rhetorical analysis. All they needed was just a little bit more, and this would have been golden, to be honest here. But let's go ahead and see what they did and why I scored it the way I did as well. So I had 2 questions for you, right? Number 1, what is Sugar's message or purpose for Alyssa Bassett? Establish a single sentence that observes this. So basically like a thesis. Again, message, purpose, maybe some devices she uses altogether, something of that nature there. And then, of course, a single rhetorical analysis paragraph in relation to that thesis. Consider some of the devices or choices Sugar makes to persuade Bassett. So you could do anything from the basic rhetorical tools of logos, ethos, and pathos. You could look at some things like diction, syntax, juxtaposition, whatever you remember, whatever you can find easily that comes naturally to you. Your first guess is your best guess sometimes. And let's go ahead and see what the student wrote altogether. I have some comments on this side if you want to look at them too, but otherwise, the student wrote for their thesis, Sugar advises Bassett to heal internal conflicts, to help external ones, and above all, persevere to accomplish her dream of becoming a writer. Damn, that is not a bad thesis whatsoever. It's a very strong, uh, you know, statement of what Sugar is ultimately trying to do altogether here. It's a nice word here too, advises. Nice verb that she chooses for this thesis here. And we don't have any devices in here necessarily, but we definitely have like the general clear intentions and goals being done by Sugar. So this thesis will definitely fly for sure, and it's kind of a more open-ended thesis where it allows us to kind of like explore what it means to heal, what are internal conflicts, what are the external ones, and what are some ways she writes or some methods she writes with to get those things done, right? So this is a pretty bomb thesis, to be honest here. I would take it. It's a nice complex one altogether. Now, in the body paragraph, the student begins with this. Sugar uses pathos. We got those Aristotelian modes over here, but Sugar uses pathos in describing that she as well suffered pain when her mother passed and how writing aided her, and she knew that the only way to let go was to write. So we have both the use of pathos, but at the same time, we also have a very clear intention of how she's using that pathos and what direction she's coming from, right? That she's also suffered, and she's going to speak from a perspective of empathy and sympathy as well here. I almost wish there was a little bit of ethos mentioned in this topic sentence as well, but it's still a great topic sentence if your whole goal is to look at pathos, right? But don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to merge devices together because that actually starts aiming at sophistication then if you can find multiple examples all throughout. So this is a pretty good topic sentence. Student goes on to say, she knew that she had to grieve and cry and feel that pain in order to move forward. Sugar wants Bassett to cope with her negative feelings and allow it to fuel her to write while allowing herself to heal, letting Bassett know that she is not alone in facing these difficulties and that Sugar has faced hardship as well. Sugar also states that no matter how great the pain may be, to keep on going. So this is not really evidence yet. It's commentary, summary. It's kind of like getting an idea what Sugar's generally doing here, but we do need some evidence eventually, right? But, it's fine to have some commentary like this here. It's actually, in fact, preferable that you do because it shows that you've read it and you kind of have a pretty good gist of the reading altogether. But we start moving to some evidence here. She does this by subtly stating that the difficulty of something or complaining about it does not make it any easier. She does this by saying, coal mining is harder. Do you think miners stand around all day talking about how hard it is to mine for coal? They do not, they simply dig. Wait, that's it? Damn it. There's a great quote, and there's a great point to make here. But, just like I made for the comments over here, there's no commentary to this, sadly. The student needs to explain analogy, for example. The student needs to talk about how there's imagery of coal mining here to juxtapose it with writing, whatever, right? So in this case, this is a good quote to use, but it lacks the sort of explanation that is needed then to follow up. And this is why some people lose points at times, because you have good setup, you got good quotes, but then later you don't really explain it, nor do you attach a device to it necessarily, right? Student says, another thing to note in Sugar's letter is that she acknowledges each of Bassett's worries and provides insight on each one, proving that she is listening to everything Bassett writes. That's ethos too. And it could be pathos as well, because again, talk about that whole like sympathy and empathy thing, but I think it's ethos in the sense that she is a person who doesn't just see it as mindless bitching. she sees it as something that is of actual concern, that she's like, hey, I hear you. This is definitely a hard thing to do. Writing itself, I know it. I've been there. So in this case, it definitely speaks on ethos here. But student goes to say, Sugar also asserts that Bastet should not worry about other opinions and to write as she wishes because writing has no limitations and people always have something to say either way. All in all, saying that no matter which career path you choose, there will always be difficulties, whether they be internal or external, but one must overcome them and persevere to achieve their dream or goal. So it's kind of like a more flowery ending, but it still works, right? It definitely talks about like what this piece is generally intending for, but at the very end of it, I still wish there was more evidence, right? Because she does mention how there's like this lack of worry needed or whatever. So I kind of wish that there was something concrete to refer to, some example from Sugar, something like that. But this piece altogether, if it was on AP exam or just at least for my standards, I give it a 1 for thesis for sure. It's a very strong thesis. It's very workable. And then later for the evidence, I give it a 3. So it's not fully done yet because there's some commentary needed, but there's a good train of logic that goes with it, and the quotes are well chosen, and the student does have a pretty good just approach to pathos as the main focus here. So this piece, not bad. 1 thesis, 3 evidence. Sophistication is not quite there because there's some missing holes there, but this piece, remember, is just graded out of 5 for the thesis and evidence, so don't worry about sophistication yet, but do aim for it. That's definitely the goal for us altogether.